Peace all. Welcome to Super Heru Radio. I'm your host, Heru, along with my co-host, Amina the Empress of 10,000 Years, as well as you, Saga Assad, my brothers, my sisters. Thank you for tuning in. That was Super Heru Radio from the album DS418, the soundtrack mixtape album CD, available now through iTunes, Amazon, as well as www.thedarkscope418.com. It's a 13-track banger. I really think you guys will like it. And it's always in tune with what it is we get down with when we get down with what we get down with. You know what I mean? So, a lot of things, of course, going on. One of the main things going on is this so-called insurrection/election that is consuming those people who are consumed with it. However, we know what it really is. It's just part of the theater, you know. So once we understand what the modus operandi of the theater is, we understand how to best protect ourselves against it. So we want to get into understanding, you know, how some of the corresponding things that we're witnessing on a global stage, again, is affecting us or not affecting us on a cellular level. In the sense that the most insignificant things sometimes have the most weight, you know. It's one drop of water that actually makes the whole thing overspill, you know what I mean, once it reaches the precipice. So as we are on the metaphysical or spiritual precipice of what people perceive as the coming of the fourth world, depending on your interpretation or misinterpretation of the so-called Olmecan, Bomar-Kanian calendar, you will know that there are basically aspects of it that are dealing with the opening of cellular memory within all of us as a mammary species. Yet, those of us who are traditionally or ancestrally genetically related to or coming from a mammary species are the ones who are experiencing it in terms of the DNA activation on a more cellular level. Yet, due to the ineffectual means of, let's say, society, or the lack of our direct empowerment in it, we are usually acting in a supportive role, in a supporting cast type role, you know what I'm saying, where we will willingly give up what we have to help the main character reach their goal. So as we're always perpetually the white guy, the black guy or the black girl in the movie, there's always one, you know what I mean? But specifically, that leads us to a limited world view, you know what I'm saying? A limited representation of what it is we can fully effectuate in our current reality, not only as individuals, but as an individual people. Amidst a lot of the grandstanding and chest beating as to who contributes what and who does what, we are sorely left with a direct line to what has to necessarily be done, because we're always dealing with the meanderings of what isn't being done. You know what I'm saying? So again, it becomes a glass half empty, half full lesson that, for whatever reason, we have not internalized enough to fully deal with the limited liability partnership that we create in society. Yet, everything that exists in it are basically tenets of things that were left to the preceding society, which again leads everything back to us. So if you look at the present world scope in terms of where a lot of the chakric energy on a universal tip is taking place, the first chakra, or let's say the sacral, Jed aspect of this is in America would be in a place called Mount Shasta, right? And then down further to in South America around Palenque and El Tul is where the line descends in terms of how the chakra wave goes down and then rises up again. The second chakra, which would be, the sexual base, would be like Lake Titicaca. You know what I mean? This is, again, based on the series wave pattern of what our ancient forefathers would refer to as the feathered serpent, which, again, is the magnetic field that travels in an algorithm path throughout the planet, right? So as we go up now to Glastonbury, we would get the fourth chakra, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, the third eye area is really no fixed location because there's a transcendent element in which the third chakra is what we're all kind of dealing with, because that's the chakra that's right before the heart. You know what I mean? So I would say that then the fifth chakra would be around the Great Pyramid, the Mount of Olives, you know what I mean, Mount Sinai, the Giza Plateau, These chakra elements, again, correspond to how we interrelate with the world that we exist in. So if you look at the United States, then as the base, or the sacral base of the spine, or the Jed, we are then looking at the United States as the foundation of whatever is being projected throughout the planet, but also the cosmos. It's a spiritually representative government, you know what I mean? Which means that it has its foundations in something that was supposed to be just. But based upon the influence of technology, as coined by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we are put in a state of flux when it comes to actually promoting a specific agenda. Also, we exist in a time where common sense is not common amongst our own people. And the energy of coveting what one of us has more than the other is predominant based upon what each of us may be feeling in terms of lacking in our initial experience as individuals walking through this hologram that we are breathing life into, in regards to how much we participate or not participate in. The level of participation exists in every breath. So, in books like the Bible, when they talk about that no one is fully innocent, that even a child is born in sin, they are speaking of the transitory nature of physical reality as it imposes itself on the true and living will of the soul, in which choices and things like that have to be made in order to get out of one situation to the other. So the main choice that the United States is faced with at this time is how to maintain a global dictatorship while at the same time fostering the downfall of that same dictatorship in order to create a new form of dictatorship. So this leads to the conundrum of every agency that's supposedly working in tandem really working for itself and sending its own intelligence to the president, as opposed to that intelligence being vetted by a universal branch, which is what Homeland Security and all that was supposed to be about. But the assassinations and killings that have taken place under this guy's watch are have been more domestic than they have been foreign. If you look at the hits, the biggest hit allegedly was when they hit Megatron, a.k.a. Osama bin Laden, and then allegedly threw him in the ocean like Megatron at the end of Revenge of the Fallen. You know what I'm saying? When my hypothesis obviously was based upon how they hit Premier Bhutto, was that he had already been killed sometime in 2002, and they probably just kept the body on ice and had one of the doubles fronting like it was him to maintain the whole DVD bit. And in the process of that, when she revealed that, that's when she summarily was shot in the head on live TV right after. You know what I mean? And then that guy kept quiet, and he didn't really hear nothing about the dude until they thawed him out and then put him in the spot and then, had the whole thing. So the question is, that whole Navy SEAL operation that happened on TV and all of that, what was that about? Did that really happen? Yeah, that was really happening. But again, they stage exercises and infiltration exercises almost every day. On the day of 9/11, there was 13 to 22 different aerial exercises, 5 to 10 of which involved planes crashing into different buildings. So they didn't know which was going on. And who was in charge of that? Who was in NORAD at the time that was going down? Cheney. Your president cousin. Just like Mitt Romney is allegedly this dude's cousin. So he related to him too. Of course he would be, because everybody that's vetted in this thing is related. Because everybody in America is related, that's white, is related to somebody black. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole issue. That's the whole overall common factor in everything else. They done made you believe that the slave name that you got, Joe Smith or whatever, was their name that they gave you, when in actuality it was the opposite. That was the name that already exists, or the name that you told them, which they could understand based upon them being Christian. Same way you have a name or a so-called nickname now is the same way you had one back then. You're going to happen. Huh? I'm going to lay down, please. No. Fatherhood. So it becomes a situation, like I said, where people become annoyed with the present status quo, and so the people who are making people annoyed use that as a means to foster whatever agenda they want. So the main issues that the United States is facing, more than all the other issues, what's keeping all of them up at night, really is post-December 21st, all of the notes and all of the debts that they owe China, Russia, the rest of these people are all going to come due. And remember, after World War II, that's why history is important. After World War II, there was no money in Europe for Europe to rebuild itself. So most of the money that came to rebuild Europe came from the United States. The United States was the one, soldiers were the ones who went in and secured all the artifacts and the paintings and all that stuff. And they was trying to sneak out through the Vatican rat lines. So between the years of 1945 and about 1956 to 1965, you see the rebirth or the renaissance of now the post-New Europe that was remade after the fall of the Europe that existed up to that time. And so different architecture was taken to different places and switched up just to, again, remake and remodel the history that was now being fostered through this time period. The money that the United States used to do this was based on the full faith and credit of the so-called American people, but it also came from the so-called predatory banksters who had already worked to foster the removal of those secured high Nazis and bring them into the American public. So after a certain amount of time, the United States started to call in the notes and stuff that Europe was basically owed it for helping to rebuild it all. That's why they could go into these people's countries and do all of the crazy stuff that they was doing and not really get no reprisal, because technically it was a payback for helping them rebuild these people's countries after World War II. The Russians followed the same model, and the Germans did the same thing, and the war between the United States and Russia began with the building of the Berlin Wall, which again was paid for by members of the Rockefeller Trust as well as members of the Lucius Trust and members of the so-called NATO what was left of the so-called Axis Nazis that were now fronting like they was Jews. And so part of the deal was that Europe needed to consolidate itself into a standardized union in which the United States would basically back and say that it was cool and agree that it was something that all the world should basically follow. So basically back then the United States basically said that, hey, this whole thing that happened in Europe won't happen again if you guys agree to eventually set up something like a quote-unquote European Union that everybody would be down with and you all could pull money from the same pot. These people back then was like, okay, but what's the faith that that's going to work? They said, well, if it works, well, it's going to work. But just to show you my faith in it, I am willing to back X amount of dollars towards it and agree to help as your country from this point on in terms of intelligence services and things like that. But if it don't work, then I'll owe you X amount of money. So here we are in 2012 or whatever, and the European Union is in shambles. They don't have no money and all of that. And so the people who agreed to help set it up, put the dough up to make sure that it could happen, now have to pay all that money back, mainly to the countries that was first hit by it, which is Greece and everything else. But heads up, most of the financial destabilization that came from it came based upon the derivative factors that was happening through the stimulus, based upon Goldman Sachs coming into the Department of Treasury and basically running it. So what this means then in America is that America can only deal with countries that deal with credit. Post-2012, you know what I'm saying, the countries that don't deal with credit are going to be those that deal in gold and silver. The United States can't deal with those countries that deal with gold and silver, which is based upon the fact that they owe too much and that gold in Fort Knox has already been used up and confiscated. And the old adage is that there's actually no gold in Fort Knox. It's a conspiracy that says that. But you could see the movie Die Hard 2, but Die Hard with a Vengeance. I see that most of the world's gold is housed in Wall Street. The same place, 55 Water Street, where most of the birth certificates, well, everybody's birth certificate is basically born at, because that's the main clearinghouse for everybody's straw. So the overall factor for this government then is what to do with all of the debt that they already got. So one of the things they got planned is setting up debt task forces to go in and aggressively starting to deal with people in they college loans, specifically the government loans. The compensation behind this then is the fact that, well, at least you ain't got to pay for health care. See what I'm saying? It's always a trade-off. When they print a document that's over 5,000 pages, you got to understand no one is going to read that. The most pages I've ever read in a book is a little under 2,500. After that, it's like, come on, man. You know, Tolstoy must have been on the next level joint with that War and Peace, how big that joint was. But essentially, the information that's gleaned or sent from any text is what all you can really use to justify whatever angle you're coming from in the particular argument or conflict. So if this nation is in conflict as a quote-unquote nation, those people who are in direct view of that are those people who consider themselves citizens of that. Yet, if you are not a citizen of something like that, then you have to decide what view or national agenda you are coming from. So it becomes almost like I said, a conundrum that we, in our present position, have to somehow address in a fashion that actually sees something of it. So the wins of us as individuals are great, but they are in no means as vast as they could be as all of us collective. Yet, if we can't trust each other as individuals, you see, then there can truly be no actual collective. So the whole thing begins to revolve around how the individual assumes and adopts whatever mind state they need to effectively become a part of what it is we are striving to create. Which really, to put it bluntly and simply, is something for ourselves. Something that we have never had. If you think about it, as much as you've built on ancient cultures and your ancient culture and you as all of that, you have never really seen a world, you know what I mean, in which you, as a so-called American-born Asiatic, has not existed where it was just people who look like you. There are certain secular communities, Amish, Chinese, Japanese, certain Indian communities, where it's so insular that they don't have to speak no other language but the language they in. Where other people, they don't even interact with the outside American populace except when it comes to, giving the pigs or whoever they shut up money or, to leave them alone. The Orthodox Jewish communities and things like that, they got their own language. They write whatever the store name in their own phonetics and all of that. You don't know what them stores say. You don't know what they selling or whatever. And you don't go in there because vibrationally you know that that's what them people do, so that's what their culture is, and you're not really in it like that. So there's this unspoken spiritual boundary that exists. But then when you know the fact that, the Hafiz and these people get all their culture from the Moors and all this other stuff, and you do interact here and there or see certain things, there's still an aspect of it where now it's raised to the point where you see why, you understand why they can't really interact with based on what they're doing. They're living off of us the way an undertaker lives off of a dead body. You know what I'm saying? But again, historically, when you go into it, when you read the book about the historical relationship between blacks and Jews, when you read the book Iceman Inheritance, when you read any of these books that deal into the hidden relationship between this and why it's the way it is, you'll see that we train them to do that because we use them to sell other white people to other Moors, which then explains the generational angst that certain white people feel towards Jewish people or whatever. But a lot of Jewish people don't even know it. So it becomes like I said, more of a thing about what you know, more so than about what you see or what is being presented to everyone. Also, due to the destabilization of quote-unquote Israel, you have the unilateral European Defense League, also known as NATO, rallying to push further into Syria. So because they've already started talking about the no-fly zone, you already know that the ground assault is basically in. So the same way they did in Lebanon and Beirut, where there was and in Mogadishu, where most of the shelling was coming from the ships offshore, bombing the actual city, as they say, softening them up for the actual assault. So the money for all of these insurgents and all of this other type of stuff that they talk about is coming from this thing they refer to as the Muslim Brotherhood, which again is really a creation of MI6 and MI5 during the collapse of the old Osmanli or Ottoman Empire, which was the last of the old Moorish dominions to fall under the pretext that would eventually become evidence in the Department of Justice document AAA-1, Truth A1. And it's so like I said, this is where it's going. So in the so-called homeland or stateside, you're going to see the implementation of different disaster exercises to correspond with whatever it is they need or they feel they need to do, just in case people start on December 21st, people wake up and, their skin be blue or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so unpredictable that anything possibly can happen, and that's the beauty of the moment in which our ancestors left it out for us to decipher. Because the ever-coming moment is in the now. You know what I'm saying? So this, what we perceive as 2012 and what people are trying to hype it up in order that to be, from the time we started doing this work, we wanted to urge people to understand that this is more of a cellular rebooting and regeneration of your own individual cosmos. That this is the coming to the end of the spiritual doubt that we have all been afflicted with for the past 6,000 some odd years. Reaching the end of this 25,000 year cycle means that we have to renew our history in another 25,000 years, which means a new Quran is written, because Quran means clock. So the clock of destiny is then the zodiac wheel that up until now has been absent of the 13th prime, which is now integrated back into us in the form of melanated consciousness and the actualization of the cosmic and celestial aspect of that in the physical personage of us as archetypes of the spiritual regeneration of all people. There's no way that you can qualify that into some sort of move or whatever. The most you can do is go, into the imagination and try to create imagery that corresponds with something internal that it becomes necessary for us to be able to internalize it. Therefore, the redundant action of proving or trying to disprove who's the devil and who's the this is already a moot conclusion. Because the very level of that means that, like when real unity is achieved, it ain't going to be about having to talk about or debate about or go over what it is. It's just going to be. You're just going to be ready to do what you got to do, whatever that is. And what these movements and physical groupings and things are really there for are to get us in the mode of thinking in a collective form. Yet if the collective body is tainted and one aspect of the body isn't, then the tainted aspect has to be severed in order for the body to regenerate fully from the infestation. And we are infested with things like Luciferianism and Satanism being presented to us through means orchestrated by entities that are not in full control of the powers that they boast to be in commune with. And those powers are loosed in them, and they are loosed in them powers in everybody else that's following them. The way to evil is through seduction, not through power. Everybody want to be powerful. But those who have the powers in them and are not necessarily know how to use it are usually taken and tutelaged and brought into a fashion through by way of seduction, like Anakin in Star Wars, in the Sith. The Sith represent the decaying Moorish Empire. The Jedi represent the Franciscan or Moorish or Franciscan Freemason Moorish Empire that followed after. Both of them together represented the Old Republic. Same thing in real life. So when you look at the stelae of Palenque, and you look at the stelae of Bacal Botan, and you look at the stelae of quote-unquote revealing of Nut, which is the one that the Crowleyite worship with Nut and Iwat and Raw Hewitt enthroned, standing in front of the chessboard with red, black, and green chess pieces. This is about the spiritual reorganizing of our overall consciousness, and therefore things like money are the material representation of how far the consciousness is going in terms of evolving. So having money does not make you spiritual, but then not having money doesn't make you spiritual either. There's nothing that says in any Bible or Quran that says that the rich man is automatically going to hell. It says that if the rich man does not respect the poor man, then he is. But the poor man cannot envy and covet the rich man because then he turns into a criminal. But most of these niggas today would rather be criminals more than they want to do crime. You know what I'm saying? Like Scarface said, anybody still rhyming about what's still in the street, hustling, crack, and all of that, A lot of y'all must be down with the people because all that shit is played out. So it's the same trickle-down economics as everything else, where the black woman has to fully degrade herself in the strip club or whatever. For one, the white woman in the strip club has now turned like the whole thing into the Olympics, where she is now doing tag team and winning trophies and belts and all of this, winning thousands of dollars of prizes with no black women around. And you know, don't no white girl have what a black woman has, regardless. Yes, like Bob Marley said, you do your more to receive your less. So, in response to all of this, I see the influence that we are all, as super Heruians, having on the universe around us and the so-called upper echelon the entertainment world, when you see people like Mahana getting the tattoo above her, in between her breast of Isis. It looked like at first Nephthys, but the breast wasn't out. So it's Isis with the wings going down, which makes her Isis. When the wings are leveled, that's our Sept. You know what I mean? But you know, she's coming into this from a pseudo-Roman, if you will, Illuminati-esque perspective. So, of course, she may not understand that. Yet she did have a circle of arms around her neck, so it shows that there is some sort of, again, Comedian influence that these people are trying to somehow siphon out of us or through us and actualizing it in some sort of right, R-I-T-E, in their mode of communication. So as you can see, there's this subtle dance between those of us that know and those of them that do and don't. He may not know, but the person who urged them, or the person who did it, or whatever, you know, and all of that goes into the energy of the ink that goes into then her body, which then becomes a part of her cellular memory. And then into us, visually, our cellular memory, by visually critiquing it, which then spiritually is whatever is operating through her more spiritual power from us. See? That's why it's good to bust it down, discuss it, move on. So like I said, as we said, this whole thing has become more about marginalizing a certain agenda through entertainment specifically, but subtly through the changing of the guard in terms of what is happening politically, which then trickles down into how many police is being put into your specific neighborhood based upon whatever demographic is being zoned, some sort of visitation. Aside from all the police brutality killings and all of the ritual missing killings that have been going on, there's been a lot of abductions and missing persons, people just disappearing. Some of these things are human traffic related, of course. Some of these things are people just, children or whatever, just bouncing from their situation and unfortunately winding up in porno shops and, you know what I mean, porn websites and all of that. Some of these are children who have escaped from snuff films, things like that. But some of them are people literally walking out of this reality. Don't think it's not. There's portals and sinkholes and things opening up all the time. Holes where you don't even see the bottom, but there's water all around the whole lake. Because there's aspects of the inner earth that's reaching out to the outer earth to help heal it. And so the upgrade of consciousness in the world has been manifested in the world becoming conscious of itself. everything is alive in creation. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, in that essence, you have this whole need or purge by this so-called government to utilize the inner earth as a means of escape. In my book, there's a chapter where I talk about where the character actually talks about how the chapter, I think, is the secret God under the world and the man with the green glove. And in it kind of lays out how the whole tunnel system kind of works and how it's possible for one people to walk from one part of the planet to the other through these tunnels that are full of vegetation and all that based on the inner sun that exists on the inner part of the planet. Just like you got an inner sun, which not only is the pineal organ or the skull, but there's also the heart. The planet got one too. These people have been struggling to get some sort of foothold in that from the beginning of their whole expedition, codenamed Operation High Jump. Yet all of that I'm talking about was happening while the Tuskegee experiment and the MK program first began to come online over here, because it was during that time, specifically between the era of 1956 and 1965, which again is the reverse of 1956, was the beginning of the whole transition of those of us that could go into a national character, into this new thing that was being presented as civil rights, due to the United States not wanting to deal with those original people as a nation. That's why if you see in the last big march they did, a lot of the men were wearing this white feather, these small white hats, because Michael Luther King was starting to get into a lot of the nationalistic aspect based upon a lot of his conversations with Elijah Muhammad, peace be upon it, when the Nation of Islam was the Nation of Islam. I'm not saying that those people in the Nation of Islam ain't in the Nation of Islam now. It's just saying that based upon the present leadership, I can see that there has definitely been an alteration in the overall view of where it was when it was the Lost Found Nation, let's say. But if you look at a lot of the offshoots of the Nation of Islam, a lot of them became plagued with a lot of what people will receive as abuse. But if you really look at it on a candid, unbiased level and compare it to the modes of MK Ultra, you would see that there were modes copied from that. And because we know and have seen in movies and read in books and seen in documentaries that there were so many traitors and infiltrators in that whole organization, in those whole organizations, that you could really tell who was who after a while. And so the more draconian some of these groups became amongst their own people, it was also a means to try to consolidate a power base for them to eventually cease whatever violence was going on and then begin to somehow or another build up the neighborhood. This is what all of these stories was about. That's what Iceberg Slim and Donald Goines and all of these people was talking about. Talking about we doing this, but we only doing this because these niggas is talking about they want to revolutionize. They ain't trying to get no guns to go against this white man right now. And I gotta eat. I ain't trying to cut my hair. I ain't trying to take this permit. I ain't trying to do none of that. And they shouldn't have had to. But now you're talking about a system that now has to be reinforced through the theater of cops and robbers, you see what I'm saying, which was the new cowboys and Indians. But remember, back in the days, the cowboys and the Indians was black people. When we really look at it, Jesse James and these people were all Freemasons who were employed by different financial robber barons, is what they were called at the time, to destabilize whatever national republic banks that still existed and were still loyal to the overall Algonquin Confederacy. They want you to think that the Algonquin Confederacy, when they say that, is just a bunch of Indians sitting around a big fire in the woods with animal skins on and shit. No, you're talking about original people, Moors, who had a establishment, longhouses, that also put money into different aspects of the empire that people who were not down with them or under their jurisdiction had no access to until the opening of the West from the illegal Louisiana Purchase initiated by the trader Thomas Jefferson and his decadent family. You know what I'm saying? So essentially, like I said, historically, we're talking about the disempowerment and the further disassociation from the Moors and the remnants of their indigenous, autochthonous lineage. So they really ain't get free till really 1945. Really, if we're going to be serious, get the book, How the Irish Became White. I didn't write that. You know what I'm saying? Get Chosen People of the Caucasus. I didn't write that. They telling you. These are white men telling you. Read Freud. Read how these people had to create. When you read these literatures that you in school and they got you reading, what they are building in your mind is the structure of what they want you to believe their society was. That's not what it was. The shit you learn ain't what happened. The shit you learn is kind of what happened. The stuff you learn is kind of like that, but it's not really like that. It's like that because it has to be like that, because these schools were patterned after what they refer to as Moors Indian School. Look that up. Set up by a guy named James T. Moore. Who's he? How come there ain't no pictures of him? Moor. Who was a rich man who had land, who donated it to the United States federal government as it was just getting started, so that way it could do that. So again, symbolically, that is my uncle. When you read the English C lesson in the original Nation of Islam and in the original 5% lessons, that's my uncle. That's my uncle that came over here 379 years ago. You know what I mean? That's him. So whether or not I'm related to him physically, there's no physical relevance to anything, because the fact that I know that even exists says something about who I am, who and what I am, because most of my people don't give a damn about nothing like that. When we talk about people that's not from the nation about stuff like that, they are amazed. You become God to them. You know what I'm saying? I came to North America by myself. My uncle was brought over here by the trader 379 years ago. My uncle can't talk his own language. He doesn't know that he's my uncle. He likes the devil because the devil gives him nothing. Why does he like the devil? Because the devil put fear in him when he was a little boy. Why does he fear him now, since he's a big man? Because the devil taught him to eat the wrong food. Does that have anything to do with the time and the above question? Yes, sir, but that makes him other than himself. And that's what you are, brothers and sisters, not necessarily all of you. But when I say that, I hope that you're evolved enough to understand that even if I'm talking about you directly, I don't know you enough to make that assumption. So I'm talking about something that is generally affecting all of us in terms of a species mind pattern that corroborates itself with a physical experience that, for the most part, is being altered through a holographic projection that has nothing to do with who and what your original purpose of incarnating in this place was really about. Only you know that. I can't tell you that. I can read your cards and help you get there, or I can read your palms or whatever and help you do that, but that's all I can really do. I can inspire and create things and put them out there in context so that way when you do the knowledge to it, but in the end, all I can really do is effectuate that. And it becomes a situation where people lose context of who and what they are. And from that point, they don't correspond to the rest of the world in that way. And that allows them to misinterpret their intentions towards you. And once that happens, you then fall into the aspect of having to prove who and what your intentions is to what somebody's idea of the quote-unquote movement is. And you get sucked into the idea of believing things about people and other things that you don't really know. And then find yourself joining some sort of imaginary allegiance, you know what I'm saying, to a point where you're so amped that it's not about the white man no more, it's about what this nigga's saying about the black man. You know what I mean? When both are a construct, yet one is more self-defeating and self-debasing. Because one man's idea shouldn't provoke such anger with people that he don't really know, unless he's talking specifically about them. You get what I'm saying? You should be people say whatever they want, and they do say whatever they want about me. Whether I choose to say something about them then becomes what it's about, because they known for talking crap. You know what I mean? But most people doing that don't even know me, or only been around me in passing. You see? And have created these illusionary aspects of what my alleged intentions is based upon who I was on a DVD with once, years ago. But again, this again is associations of the mind based upon ideology that's being fed to produce a certain idea that allows a certain type of entity to foster from that idea, that can then commune with the other entities that share that idea. That can be positive or negative. But that's how ideas begin. I wrote that book based on an idea. One night where there was no heat, all in but one room when Selena was nurturing her more. During those months, there was only heat in the bedroom. So in the living room where the computer and all that was, it was like, you know what I'm saying? So when I'm writing this thing, I'm writing it like that. You know what I mean? But the idea was important enough to be able to do it. And once I started, it's like, she was like, okay, this is all you can do with this right now. You got to stop. You got to send it to the editor. Like, this is, you know what I'm saying? Yet I'd rather write one book that everybody reads than mad books that nobody reads. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me. And that's not a slight to anybody who writes whatever. I hope to write a lot of books one day. Yet I can only do what I can do in the moment that I can do it. And I don't base what I'm doing on what somebody else doing. So when somebody else is talking about what you're doing, to the point that, and you're not talking about them, you understand? There's a lot going on in that, especially when you don't know the people like that. Yet again, misery loves company. You got to remember, original people, that there are black people who know how to put roots on people through charm. That's what the play Jelly Roll Morton was about. Minnie LaMucha and things like that. The Candyman. All of these are names of Lucifer, who is now being painted as the good guy, like I said he would, on certain people. You know what I'm saying? Or associated with the pineal gland. And I know a text that they have read that corresponds to that. Yet, as an occultist, you have to look at the 360 view of what it is, but also look at, in the mainstream, or what people perceive as reality, what is the predominant understanding of the mob mentality towards this specific talisman. And it's the mob mentality that corresponds with the so-called rulership of this dimension corresponds that with a certain degree of evil to keep people away, but also to attract certain people to understand the true nature of that. This is where the seduction of evil thing comes in. This is where they get you to understand the three-headed God as something other than the pineal, hypothalamus, and pituitary, which is really the three kings of the Bible. You know what I mean? So what you got to always understand, always got to monitor is your soul when you deal with these different texts, these different systems. Palomeombe, Vudun, you know what I mean? Palomante, Candomblé, Caracolo, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Anubis, Moon Cult, stuff like that. When you get into the Typhonian stuff, when you get into that type of stuff, you got to really understand that you're dealing with things that don't have a moral sense of being. You're dealing with loose spirits. Lucifer is a loose fire. You can't control a loose fire. You can't say that a loose fire then, you know what I mean, is symbolic of the pineal gland, because the pineal gland is there to produce a order from that fire, from fire in that sense. Therefore, the pineal gland is the universal energy. At the very core of that is the locus coeruleus, which is the black dot, which is still, but not still in static, still in the essence to create the eminence that we perceive the fire to be. But all the fire is a symbolic representation of an element that combusts based upon the unseen come together to produce. You know what I'm saying? To produce the element to do so. This is the black gene that was synthesized to create the so-called Manhattan Project that they talk about. This is why they harvested the DNA and the enzymes and the carbon data and stuff like that from ancient people. Read about what they was doing to the people in Guatemala. Read about what they admitted to recently as 2010 and what they did to the people in Guatemala. They had a whole Tuskegee experiment running down there. So it just so happens to be that there's black people down there, they doing that too. You see what I'm saying? This is the United States, man. So we're talking about a genetic acquisition of bodies that correspond to a universal idea that hooks itself into a governmental oligarchy that seeks to still have a system based on credit that is being isolated by countries in the world that want to deal with gold and silver. And so to consolidate the base, they need to get as many American troops out of America as possible to bring the UN people in. This is what the white man was talking about on the news at the time. Now, we've been saying that type of stuff, but essentially, this is what they said. So, on to the freaking. Say it again. You know what I'm saying? So this goes into higher gas prices. This goes into more education reform, because the mode of the populace now has to be directed into a form of almost ultra-capitalism. It's like one last hurrah where we all go in. So this this Christmas coming up is like they want it to be a grand Christmas where they can kind of usher this whole thing in. You know what I mean? So this christening of this, so-called mind state that will kind of just start to be there. You know what I mean? Will be evidence of your own awakening. You've already started feeling it in the fact of not being able to really sleep like that. Not from worry or not from insomnia per se, but almost like a waiting. Food don't necessarily taste the same. You know what I mean? Unless you make it, conversations with people are basically mundane. You don't really have a corresponding nature to want to participate a lot, feeling isolated. These things, like I said, are all occurrences of the soul's awakening to the fleetingness of the hologram. And these are real things that are happening to you. It's not you making it up, A lot of people are depressed. Most people are depressed, if you really ask them, it's because people don't listen to them. People only talk or tell them what to do. And some people are not built to fight off other people's agendas with them. Like John Coltrane was a great guy, but one of the memoirs I read on him said that people used to kind of like try to punk him and teach them moves because he was so soft-spoken. But Alice Coltrane was part of Moorish Science Temple, or I should say the Moorish Orthodox Church, as was Miles Davis, And these people, again, represent great icons of spiritual archetype of our greatness in the planet. Yet, we don't necessarily own any of the material benefits from that unless we're in the now. That's why they prefer a lot of their artists to sleep, so that way they can handle the affairs of the artist without interference. More than the money is control. It's being able to say that I own this even though I didn't create it. So there is a will in evil, you have to understand, that thrives on itself, not on itself being evil. That's something you got to constantly beat. You know what I mean? Which means you got to essentially be mad like all the time. You got to be just crass and horrible like all the time. That's not cool. That's what makes people evil. Yet, like I said, the will to evil to most people is the fact that maybe at one time they had something that was taken away, or they were taken advantage of in some way. The art of doing that to people is what intelligence essentially is all about. That's what it's there to do. To compromise people's trust and to pit people against each other to the point that they do something drastic, like kill each other, or for something that wasn't true in the first place. This is when you look at the Jason Bourne shit and all that now, all of that is based on what they was doing to the Panthers. Imagine Jason Bourne, instead of being Jason Bourne, it was Huey Newton. Bobby Seale, one of these people. Or better yet, Bunchy Carter. You know what I'm saying? Bless the day. These people are corresponding with energies that they really don't even understand. But they have been left with the blueprint enough to figure out. And so all of the black operations through COINTELPRO that they was flipping on original people wind up in the movies that we watch today. Enemy of the State and all of that type of stuff. That's where it started. Movies like Enemy of the State and Bait with Jamie Foxx. These niggas literally become targets, you know. Actually, even further back from then, from Surviving the Game with Ice-T, the dread when Gary Busey and them was trying to kill him, and the game preserved. This game preserves right now in Africa, where white people are going and black children are being let out, and they are shooting them and taking pictures with them the way you would a deer, you know what I mean, that you shot or something like that. This is not fiction. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. So, not meaning that I was there to see it, but I saw a picture that was not photoshopped, not flipped like that. I also saw a picture where they were with two Belgian Caucasian males, UN peacekeepers, were holding a black youth over a fire in Africa, somewhere. I forget the country. So again, man, I only had to see Hotel Rwanda once to know, the fix is in on that. That Africa thing can be uplifting, but it can be very depressing because it's like I couldn't imagine. They've been running ops in Africa since the wars in Angola. And even before then, with the Boers and all of that. Really sad, man. Okay. 773 on Super Heru Radio. On Super Heru Radio. (702) on Super Heru Radio.
Radio-Aseer, is this you?
Peace, I can hear you, bro.
How you doing, my brother?
I'm good, King. How you doing?
Man, I'm all right. You know, it's a blessing to hear your voice again. I called you several months ago, and I always have questions for you.
That's what's up. I'm glad you did, man. What's going on?
You like an oracle ahead of your time.
Thank you, family.
I
appreciate it.
You know. Oh man, don't thank me. Let me thank you, man. The chess game that's going on right now between the celestial beings and those who believe that they're in power can easily be explained. I would say if you try at least to put your feet in the Creator's shoes, which is impossible, you would look at a game or anything that's created as something that you created. So therefore, anybody that's playing a game, which is a game that you created, you're looking at them like, are you serious, right?
Right.
But anybody that is in leadership or that is running the game wants a challenge, because anything outside of that is just boring.
That's true.
So therefore, the Creator is looking at, these world leaders basically just laughing. But it's kind of like it's sad, because the world leaders are laughing, thinking that they're winning the game.
Yeah, and they just
so when you actually think about sitting down playing a chess game with someone, and this person that's your opponent is an expert. They're sitting there looking at you, laughing, thinking that you're doing something, and they're looking at you like you're a sad cause. So their face is fixated to where it's like, I can't believe this. So the world leaders are looking at the Creator like, okay, the Creator's losing because of the fixation that's on the Creator's people, the original people.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
So they're laughing. They think they won.
Indeed.
So that they're playing their pieces as though they have a strategy, but their strategy has already been set up for a loss.
Exactly. It's been taken
out. They're already
taken
done.
out when they started it.
Oh, Mommy.
So it's basically like once you get into the mind frame of knowing who you are, even in the smallest part, you have to look at it somewhat in that way.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a reason why black people have, kinky hair, and every other race has all this straight, pretty, what they call pretty hair. But to me, it looks like horse hair or animal hair.
Exactly.
They want to look at us like, we're apes and monkeys and all this, but you got to ask yourself, what does a monkey's hair look like? It's straight.
Yeah, when you shave it, it's white.
The only animal I can think of that has nappy hair is a lion.
Yep, that's right.
And not even a sheep. A sheep has the most curliest hair that I can think of. When you see a black person with a hair like a sheep, you think they're mixed.
That's right.
But you ain't gonna get no comb through a lion's mane.
No. And you're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to.
But these people want to break all the lions and put them in cages and create a grown lion that's naturally sympathetic to their vocal commands.
Yeah, they try to.
Real.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they try to breed these lions and tigers to make them white, but the people don't know that these white tigers and lions that they're breeding are sick. These animals are sick. They have to breed them, and majority of them come out retarded with birth defects. They're killing these animals just to make them white.
That's right. That's how sick they are.
They're sick, man.
Sick. They have been allowed to be on the planet, and nobody is saying it's cool. To them, it look like our people is down with it. We just like whatever y'all want to do. I'll fight for you, I'll kill for you, I'll let you kill me, I'll let you rape me, whatever. That's how they look at us. It's like we can do anything to these people. They don't feel like they can like that. The Chinese, they don't feel like they can do that. They can't do that.
Exactly, man.
Right now, if they say we're going to round up all the Chinese people in America and put them in concentration camps, the Chinese government would not be with that. Chinese government, oh, yeah? Okay, well, give me all the money.
I put it like this. If you're dealing with, you can try to round up the Chinese people in this country. You can try to round up the Mexicans. You can try to round up all these other races because truly, in fact, the only race in this country that has no memory of who they are is African American. And then when it comes down to the Africans that are being brought into this country, they'll tell you that you might as well take the African off of that.
Right.
So actually, who are we? Right? That's what they want to make us think.
Right. They want to get into that and not really, and we don't really want to get into that because once we do, once we really deal with that, then we're going to have to do something with it.
Man, they have it set up. Exactly. They have it set up right now to where any black man that speaks any type of knowledge that has to do with the true history of the African American, they set it up to where it sounds like you're bickering.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I couldn't do that. You couldn't maintain a society that does that. Yet their society works for them. And what it is that the society has a certain protocol, and everybody kind of tries to fit themselves into that square box. So those people who really, really try to fit are the ones who are actually able to roll with whatever they're doing. Yet they are so out of touch with any and everybody else that they only really are serving whatever the agenda of what these people they have ordained as people who can get them stuff, right?
Exactly.
Are the only ones who can validate what it is they want to do. I know.
If you can shine a little bit of how do you say it, a little bit of artificial light on somebody, they're gonna follow you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, because when you're following a light that's artificial, all you're gonna do in the end is bump your head. You know, so it's better to follow the true light. But the fact of the matter right now is you have black women and black men that are following that artificial light to the point where it's only a limited amount of black people that are magnetically attached to the true light, to where we are looked at as outcasts.
Yeah.
You know, so it's hard to find someone that you can really, truly connect with right now. And it was set up in that matter, in that form. It's a format.
Yep. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
They want you to feel like you're going crazy.
Exactly. And the peers, the people in your community who are zombies to it, are the ones who help perpetuate you with that false diet of insecurity, which then becomes how people deal with each other in the hood. It's beautiful at some point.
Exactly, man.
Others, but in the most part, it's always depressing at some level. You know what I mean? No matter how beautiful or dope the hood is and how great the memory, you always got the memory of the person who got shot or died too young or didn't make it or turned out to be a wino or had, you know what I mean, raped this person or did, you know what I mean? Like, it's not supposed to be like that.
The hood is the pinnacle. The hood is
some sort of mind control system.
Yeah. It's all about mind control. You know, but they want to take you away from the hunter-gatherer mentality, which would never affect the earth to where there's a global warming. You know, The hood is actually the pinnacle, because when you look at the hood, it's nothing but hunting and gathering.
Yep, that's
right. True. You know, they're out there hustling and all this, but right about now, the way things are, the economy is set up to where they picking like they picking cherries. You know, they pick and choose who they want to put in that appointed black seat in these jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So if you go in there and you're talking like them, they're gonna read you. They're gonna know if you're naturally acting like them. They're going to know if you're putting on a front, because CNN and all these motherfuckers, the media is running how these business owners and these CEOs and the HR, they're running how they pick and choose their employees.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say the economy's down, that gives them the opportunity to pick and choose.
That's true.
They keep you begging, right? They want you to beg.
It's pretty much a wash. You know what I mean? How I see it, it's pretty much a wrap for them. You know what I mean? And it's been that way since we all came to consciousness. The day that everybody that's listening came into consciousness was the day it became a wrap for all of them. Just because.
Man, I'm not going to state the exact date. I'm not going to state the exact date, but I came into consciousness on Halloween. Right? So my consciousness, I know that it's crucial.
Indeed.
It's crucial, right?
Yep.
And it's hit me in a certain way to where I was just sitting here studying, man. I was listening to master teachers like you, several others.
Thank you.
And I came about, a situation where I'm meditating and I started following the path of the sun. Now, the swastika has to do with the path of the sun.
Mhm.
And I didn't find that out till after, but I was following the path of the sun, so I'm spinning in a circle. I'm standing up spinning. And I stopped at a point. And I said, man, what the fuck is this shit, right? So I go look outside, and I walk diagonal to the window, and I go look out the window, and the sun is gleaming right in that same direction. So I'm like, what the fuck is this? So each day after that, I'm trying to figure out this pattern, and I got it down to the point where I stay at, I figured out each hour of the day where the sun is shining around my place.
That's dope, man. You got to teach people how to do that. You know what I mean?
I don't know how to. I can only do it from where I live at.
That's a skill connected to something that they've classified as flawless navigation, where you're able to know where you are at all times based upon where you are and what you
exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But I want to get your opinion on something.
Thanks for calling, my brother.
Okay, I'm not gonna run your ear off, man. I know it's other callers. I just wanted to put that in your ear, man. Eventually, I'll call you and chop it up with you again.
Indeed. Thanks for calling again, brother. I appreciate it.
Hey, Aseer, let me say something real quick, though.
What's up?
Much love to you and your family, man. I don't know if anybody ever told you this, but your queen has the type of spirit that Lauren Hill did when she was in her prime.
Indeed. Thank you, my brother.
Have you ever heard that?
I didn't hear the last part you said. I thought you said.
No, I said, have you ever heard that?
Say it again. I didn't hear what you said exactly.
No, I said your queen has the type of spirit and energy that Lauren Hill did when she was in her prime.
Yeah, people tell her that all the time, man. I've had people run her down and be like, yo, it's you. And it's like, nah, it's not.
Okay, I thought I was tripping. Nah,
you ain't.
But look at this. It's a window. It's a window, right? Because Lauren Hill, she, no disrespect to the Marleys, but Lauren Hill, she went for the lion, right?
Indeed.
But if you look at Lauren Hill now, she fell off according to what she ran after, right?
Exactly.
But your queen actually ran towards a real lion.
Indeed.
So it's like a mirror effect. It's a mirror effect.
Indeed. It's a doppelganger. You're right.
Your wife is doing beautiful. Your wife is beautiful. She's doing her thing.
Yeah.
So your wife is actually like the true image of that.
Indeed. Well, if they ever do a movie, I don't know who else they're going to get. You know what I mean? And she went to school for acting, so.
Oh yeah, man. She's definitely on that. It almost looks like Lauren Hill was trying to be like her, because
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't see your wife falling off no time soon.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Money.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, let me let you go, though, my brother.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for calling again and for the support. We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Take care of yourself, man.
Peace.
All right.
$205 on Super Heru Radio.
Peace, Aseer. This is Andre, man, down here in Alabama.
Hey, what's up, brother? How are you?
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I shot you a text, man, yesterday.
Yeah, I really appreciate
just saying thank you, man. That I really just wanted to drop that on you. But, yo, I just real quick, I want you to do, I kind of got the signs to it. But one thing, did you see that stand-up Cat Williams did called Catapocalypse? Have you seen that?
Yes, I did. I just saw it.
Yeah, me too. He went in, but could you go in on the science behind this new flick that's coming out, this Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer?
Oh yeah, man. It's based on a book, and essentially it gets into the history of him in a pseudo-fictionary state. Well, the movie, to me, actually is about, on a propaganda level, about Republicans and Democrats. The vampires saying that Republicans, you know what I mean? And Democrats being backed by Abraham Lincoln with his black friend, who's supposed to be Randolph with no knowledge of himself. You know what I'm saying? So there's that element. But that whole aspect of this history of the America outside of the history everybody knows is now going to become more and more prevalent. That's why in my book I expounded on a fictional, non-fictional basis of that whole relationship between Randolph, Hitchcock, and Abraham Lincoln in the whole Peerless 3 section of the book, where we talk about the secret history of it, but in that weave in elements of what really was going on in terms of why the Emancipation Proclamation came, how he's perceived as a black man, a pseudo-black man, with a black running mate, obviously was Hannibal Hamlin at the time, around all of these white, quote-unquote, Freemasons who have now become senators in their own little federal republic. They almost perceive him as like, well, you already come from the people who's giving us the money to do this, so how you want to sit here and act like you one of us like that? That's why they made the penny face the opposite direction from all the other coins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Make it brown. They used to call them Africanus.
Yeah.
But most white historians and those elements of the history is locked away in the different Lincoln Institute repositories that only sanction elements that are a part of the modern lexicon of what Lincoln was about. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But all of that is to pique the interest, like I said, of the people into the secret history. That's why they don't understand what they're really doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it just seems like more and more as we go along, because, you really can't really hide the truth. You know what I'm saying? And it's just getting unearthed more and more. People are, like you said, like the conscious level of the whole world, everybody, black, white, whatever, so-called white, whatever. Everybody's waking up to a lot of stuff. Some people are accepting what they're coming into, and some people are fighting against it.
Right.
And it's like we saw like what we was talking about with Cat Williams. When he was hot as fish grease, it just seems like he was approached by particular people the same way Dave Chappelle was, and he wasn't going for it. The next thing you know, they made him crazy, catching all these cases. But then the next person blow up is Kevin Hart. I ain't saying the brother ain't funny, but I'm just looking at how they move.
You know what it is.
And then he does Catapocalypse, and he shows you. He's like, yo, they arrested me 14 times, and I never went to court. You know what I'm saying? It was just something to make him unravel. Because they probably looked at him like, oh, he might be down with the business. He looked like he might be a little faggot or something, this, that, and the third. They didn't find out that this dude's a real dude.
That's right. But see, when you do movies with them, where you let them symbolically rape you, then you got to remember that you have told them on the low that potentially you can do that. Because the nigga who did that in the ritual, well, in the movie, was the same black dude recently. They was at a party. He was in the movie Expendables, where they all taking pictures, and he take off his shirt, and he start flexing his muscles, and he's wearing a bikini top.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Huh?
Yeah.
These people are ridiculous. These black men would do anything for a role. Like, you ain't got to do that. They was all taking pictures, regular, all of that. This nigga go take off his thing, and he got a goddamn polka dot bikini top on, flexing muscles like he hard. Like, what's wrong with you? You got children.
Right?
You got a son. You got a son, man.
And that stuff, and when you do something like that, it's forever. You know what I mean? Like, it never goes away. It's forever.
It is.
That's like when Chappelle was on Oprah's show, and he was talking about he was on Blue Streak with Martin, and they wanted him to dress up like a woman. And he was like, nah. And this was before Dave Chappelle was Dave Chappelle. You know, like he was Dave Chappelle, but this is before he blew up. But dude had enough in him. He like, nah, I ain't doing that.
Nah. And then he did the block party shit and got the Fugees together, flipped the whole Rich magic on niggas.
I mean,
Fugees in the documentary was like, yo, we don't even know how it's happened. We just wound up here. We heard we was going to be here, so we just came to see it. We were like, okay, well, we going to do it.
Exactly. And then did it in Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't do it in, like, you know what I'm saying, Shea Whitey Park somewhere. This nigga did it in Brooklyn in the streets. And he ain't he live in Ohio. He did it in Brooklyn. That was fly.
Yeah, man. I should get weed from and stop right down the block from there. Back in the
you know what I'm saying?
And that shit is real. So they can't act like it ain't what it is. And that's all I'm saying. Say what it is and then let it be that.
And
let
don't
it try to make it seem like the... Yeah, man. Don't make it seem like I'm whack because I don't want to do that. Like it's a coincidence that Cat Williams is short and Kevin Hart is short. You know
Right.
Like, they both short.
Very short.
You know
very diminutive.
Kevin Hart is funny.
Yeah.
But funny as Cat, I don't know. But does it even matter? It only matters when one is put in a higher context than the other based upon what one was more willing to do than the other.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Because it was like I was telling my wife, he did soul playing. That usually, like, that's a career killer, something like that. Because soul playing, in all honesty, that should never been to the movies. That was like a hood classic. That's something that should have went to DVD. I mean, most of the hit movies go straight to DVD or something. So you look at something like Soul Plane, that went straight to DVD. That's okay, that's DVD. This guy had a major motion picture that was horrible. Yeah. That's it usually. They usually don't give black people in that sphere too many chances. Either you making the money or you not. And that's wow. And then now he's the hottest stand-up comedian on the planet.
Again, man, he's just like Steve Harvey and them. He came on, he did his time on the circuit, blew up, people knew his name. He got on, divorced his wife, right?
Yeah.
Started hanging with the rest of them, you understand? And then the next thing you know, Cat is on the down spiral, he's on the up. That's what it is. That's how they run their society, because they run it like Darth Vader and Anakin. Maybe it's only two at a time, you know what I mean?
Oh, that was real what you said about the production, too. That was real.
Okay.
That was real. But, yo, I'm not going to hold you up. I know the world wants to talk to you, Aseer, man. So peace and blessings. I'll be in touch with you on something else, man. But thank you, man. Thank you for everything you do, fam.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate it.
All right?
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for calling in.
All right. Honors, man.
Peace.
Peace.
Eight 856 the Heru Radio. Me. 334 on Super Heru Radio.
Peace, brother. How you doing?
Peace, King. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. Peace to you and your family.
Thank you, man.
No problem. I'm a first-time caller. This is my first time getting on the line, but I've been listening for a couple of months. And you're an excellent teacher. Just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that, man.
And really what I want to talk about is... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment about the whole white thing, about why we're treated the way we are in this country. I think it comes from they don't respect us because we did not fight back. You can't fight an individual or a race if they do not defend themselves.
That's true. You ain't lying.
And me, myself.
Again, you could thank Martin Luther King for that.
Huh.
I mean, thank him for that, bro. But Vernon Johns, the one that came before him, wasn't talking all of that. Vernon Johns was more like a Baptist Malcolm X. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was on some other shit, so they had to throw, Michael up in there, shake it up, and diverted on some Gandhi program, because that worked for the MI5 and 6 in England. Because, again, he was a Jesuit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And,
he had to do him.
Because, you know, I know I'm the type of person that you can say what you want. You can talk crap all you want to, but as soon as you touch me, you know, it's game on, and unfortunately we didn't do that.
No, we didn't.
So,
right when we could have, and switched the whole direction of the country based upon what was happening internationally with us on some indigenous warship. But we had no knowledge of that at the time.
Yeah.
Because everybody was caught up in this whole civil rights thing, which was the point. That was the purpose. That's why it happened. So we just catching up to all of that knowledge of what that shit was now. And then trying to scramble and then file different paperwork and do all types of different shit just to, you know what I'm saying, get a standing that we're not what we thought we were for the past 60 years. But we're not doing it together.
That's true. Also, I want to know, are you able to do readings over the phone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I would definitely like to get that done, because I'm going through some fly stuff right now that I need some insight on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Just email me at houseofel@hotmail.com. We can make that happen.
Hotmail.com. Okay, I will do that. All right, appreciate it, brother.
Man.
Peace.
Thanks for calling, man. Hey, got it. Nine 5-4.
Hi, what's up?
What's up?
Man, I'm good, man. You remember me, man?
Your voice
I
sounds
hope you
familiar.
do. I was the last caller from last Monday.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We was building on
Now,
that.
I just want to thank you for the, I got the response back from Facebook. I just want to say it was highly appreciated, you know. And first things first, man, how you doing now, man? What's cracking, baby?
You know,
what's up?
Holding it up, man.
Hey, man,
you know what I mean?
At least you still here, man. When I say you still here, strong at that. So, you know, take that in appreciation, man. You know, there was a lot of things I had asked for, you know, that birthday coming up and everything, but I'm not going to get into it until that happens. Thank you, man. Everybody gives a lot of praise on the show, and that's really what it is, you know. That's really where it's supposed to come from, the heart, you know what I'm saying? I've heard a lot of things today, man. Yeah, man. I think a lot of people, you know, especially the Super Heru listeners, they need to just, you know, well, that's just my opinion. Stop taking stuff so seriously, you know what I mean? Especially when it's coming from media, you know? Stop taking it so seriously. Like, stop really thinking that it's going to apply to you at a certain point. You know what I mean? It's sad when, you know, it happens around the family. You know, when I say it happens around the family, you know, I'm in Miami, you know, and I go to Miami-Dade College. And, you know, for now, you know, I'm just taking courses just to, you know, get by so I can, I don't know why, because I ain't really working, so I might as well just be in school occupying my mind somehow, you know what I mean?
I agree.
So, you know, basically, you know, I hear a lot of things, and I was talking to my nutrition teacher today, and I was telling him, look, I know it's early, but let me do a presentation at the end of the class, because I know that's what most of the professors do out there. They try to make you do a presentation. But let me do a presentation on how the reason why some people, a majority of people are obese in America is because they're influenced by the wrong things that they see, such as you can see someone like Kim Kardashian holding up a Big Mac and a billboard. And then, you know, it becomes popular amongst the young crowd that, you know, watches her television show, or Nicki Minaj has a big fat ass, but the truth behind it is, you know, whether it's real or fake, having a fat ass doesn't always mean you're healthy and thick. You know what I mean? That's just, you know, different people have different situations. And the thing is, I wonder, because I remember the phases of hip-hop. I was born in 1989, so I wasn't, you know, deep in the 90s like, you know, people like you were and stuff like that. But I know for a fact, you know, there was, I believe, thick women, no? No? Was that still in style? Was that in style back then?
It was.
Not how it is now, right?
It was. It just
so just wonder, you know, what's going to happen to those girls that are super thick now? You know, years go down the line, they're not taking care of their bodies and stuff like that. You know, how would they, you know, be looking? You know what I'm saying? Like, you see how, you know, a lot of people are now influenced down here by Rick Ross to be fat. I ain't nothing wrong with being fat. You know, you are you, but if you're aspiring to be that and you don't have a legitimate reason, you know what I'm saying, what's your, you know, reason in the future for having an excuse saying, well, I'm fat, now what am I going to do? Well, when Rick Ross was high at the moment, you know what I'm saying, what were you supposed to do, you know what I mean? You know, you just got caught up with the wrong things. So, you know, I called here before, and I was bashing, I don't remember the conversation, I was bashing the dude, Lil B. But I'm not bashing Lil B because I understand it now. Even A$AP Rocky, you know what I'm saying? Like, these young rappers, they kind of bring in a certain feel to the game that's making these, you know, older cats uncomfortable. And I don't mean older cats like high up there, you know, back in the days like Legends or KRS-One or Rakims or whatever. I'm talking like these older cats that's just recently popping, you know what I'm saying? For instance, like Rick Ross or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, when I had said the comments about Lil B, I just realized this dude got everybody mad. Not everybody mad, just who's listening to rap. Everybody who was in rap, too. You know what I mean? This dude, A$AP Rocky, not too long ago, was at the VMAs. You know, grabbed your girl Rihanna's ass on stage. I could tell she didn't approve of it, you know what I mean? But she went with the flow, you know. And I love how, you know, certain people are doing their own thing now, you know what I mean? And I'm just saying that certain people because most people wouldn't, you know what I mean? Most people wouldn't. Most people care about their image. You know, I don't really think A$AP really cares if, you know, he's not on that VMA stage again, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and, you know, I just say all that. But one question I got to ask you, when will you be touching down in Miami doing a lecture?
This coming September 23rd at Sophia's Garden in Miami.
Where will it be, like on Facebook, posted up?
Yes, on Facebook. It'll be on my Facebook page, but it's at Sophia's Garden at 3450 Northwest 169th Terrace in Miami Garden.
Okay. All right. I'll just email my questions in regards to other things that I have in regards to the lecture. Let me ask you, with this Chris Lightly, what do you think happened? You know what I mean? What do you think happened? You know, quote unquote, he committed suicide, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, he talked about it last week, and I think last week as well. Specifically, there's a ritual that takes place with certain black Def Jam executives in which they start making so much money with these people and start brokering all these deals where there's a cycle that develops where they become chemically dependent and then socially divergent, where they start frequenting more, say, with their family or whatever, and they grind and get there. Then they get there, then they get the money, then they set everything up. Then they start to join different clubs and stuff that those people participate in.
Okay. Because what my older cat told me, he was like, he's responsible for a lot of cats that was popping in the 90s, not just 50 Cent. You know, I think 50 Cent was like the last person. Recently he was like managing like full time.
LL Cool J, everybody. But my point is, he fell into a system, or is a part of a system that perpetuates a certain degree of power exchange. And when you start to lose a little bit of it, everybody starts to pounce on you. So the minute one government agency starts to mess with you, that's when they all start coming like sharks,
try to throw you off to get you to destabilize and become more socially divergent. So this created a divorce situation, which was a similar situation that happened to the executive. I forget the brother's name, but the one before him in November 2004, who wound up shooting himself allegedly in the head too.
Oh, you talking about shooting himself allegedly? I remember who you talking about. It's some guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, shit. And he had just become president of Def Jam right after Jay-Z had been ushered out quietly. So specifically, you're talking about stuff that he owed people, but also he had just signed over a lot of his essential revenue from them by this merger that he made with this other conglomerate company, who is now probably absorbing most of the stuff that he left in terms of business. You know what I'm saying? For him to help now take over what he had already set up or was going to set up from that. Also, I think this is connected to the whole 50 Cent curse that Rick Ross put on that nigga to the point where every time he tried to put out rap shit.
Oh, my. Let me tell you this, and I don't want to, run my time with it. But
what happened to this dude?
When that happened, right, that whole thing that started with that right there, right, happened, right? Okay, this was my thing, right? I believe that
we gotta get one more person.
That wasn't even a battle, man. And then on top of that, if I had to give my hats off to anybody, it probably was Curtis. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying, it's like some people don't know what they're dealing with, and then, you get different reactions. Some people, most of the reactions be shocked because they didn't really know that person could do that.
Right, but remember,
the boy
we're not
Ross, his approach was, I can't believe this nigga's actually acknowledging
we're not talking
doing
about
all
these
this.
people as people. We're talking about these people as archetypes of situations that real people find up emulating. You see what I'm saying? So this is what I mean about how we have to almost disassociate us the lesson from what we see from all of that. And what I see, what you see from it, is, again, because these people don't work together, they wind up all getting taken out. And the only person who winds up getting paid, again, is the white man. So,
basically, man. Wow, man.
But thanks for
all
calling,
this goes in my head, man. All that goes in my head, man. Because, like, for real, like, who's black at these times and that's making money committing suicide or, just these tragedies that happen all out the blue, you know what I mean? Like with the Usher son, all that tells me that if you're whatever you want to call it, minority African American in this country, and you got your bread up real high, these people gonna fuck with you. They're gonna make you play with your freedom. They're gonna make you fight for your freedom.
Sorry for that. Sorry to you, brother, but we're running low on time. So I wanted to close out by saying peace to everyone, and thank you for the support of the Dark Skull 418, as well as the support of BlackMambaWorkouts.com, as well as the album, the Dark Skull 418 soundtrack mixtape album by Team Cordoba, which is myself, Aseer the Duketeers, with the Empress of 10,000 Years, and I'm all Black Hawk. Look for the video soon for hip rap rock, and we're gonna definitely keep it moving. Thank you, people who would like to send donations via PayPal. You can do so through dukeoftears@gmail.com. That's DUKEOFTIERS @gmail.com. And anyone else who wants to holler at us directly for consultations, readings, performances, lectures, book signings, let us know at houseofel@hotmail.com. We definitely want to give thanks and praise to all the ancestors and creators for allowing us to keep the show going for as long as we have. And thank you, people, for the continued support. And thank you for translating that into material financial support as well, because that helps us put into more research and more accuracy into what we're striving to achieve, which is total M activation, pineal activation for all of us, right? You know what I'm saying? Whatever you perceive that to be, and hopefully it's in tune with